The cafe was decorated like a winter wonderland, but to Maya Chen, it felt more like a glittering trap. She sat alone at the corner table, watching couples laugh over hot chocolate while she checked her phone for the 37th time. No messages, no apologies, just the crushing realization that she'd been stood up on Christmas Eve. Again, she should have known better. 3 years of failed blind dates had taught her nothing except how to spot the nearest exit in any restaurant. But this time, her sister had been so insistent, so certain that David was the one. Maya had actually allowed herself to hope, buying a new emerald dress that brought out her eyes, spending an hour on her makeup, even practicing conversation starters in the mirror like some desperate character from a rom-com she'd never admit to watching. Now she was the joke. The woman alone on Christmas Eve in a cafe full of happy people, clutching a cooling cappuccino and trying not to cry. "Excuse me, is anyone sitting here?" Maya looked up, ready to deliver a sharp response about how obviously the empty chairs meant she was alone. "Thank you very much." But the words died in her throat. The man standing beside her table wasn't David. He was tall with kind brown eyes that crinkled at the corners, dark hair slightly messy from the winter wind, and a tired smile that somehow still managed to be genuine. But what caught her attention most was the little girl hiding behind his legs, peeking out at Maya with enormous blue eyes and clutching a worn stuffed rabbit. "I'm sorry to bother you," the man continued, his voice warm despite the exhaustion Maya could see etched in his features. "Every table is taken, and my daughter Sophie really needs to sit down. She's been on her feet all day at the hospital, and I promised her hot chocolate before we head home." The hospital. Maya noticed it then, the slight antiseptic smell, the exhaustion that went deeper than one long day, the way he held his daughter's hand like it was the most precious thing in the world. "Of course," Maya heard herself say, gesturing to the empty chairs. "Please, sit." The relief that flooded the man's face was genuine. "Thank you so much. I'm Marcus, and this is Sophie. Say hi, Soph." The little girl, who couldn't have been more than 6, gave a tiny wave before climbing into the chair across from Maya. She immediately placed her stuffed rabbit on the table, adjusting it carefully so it faced forward. "That's Mr. Hoppers," Sophie announced solemnly. "He likes hot chocolate too, but he can't drink it because he's a rabbit." Despite everything, Maya felt her lips curve into a smile. "Well, it's nice to meet Mr. Hoppers. I'm Maya." Marcus excused himself to order at the counter, leaving Maya alone with Sophie and the elephant in the room that was her ruined Christmas Eve. She should have felt awkward, but there was something about the little girl's earnest expression that made it impossible to wallow in self-pity. "Are you waiting for someone?" Sophie asked, displaying the brutal honesty only children possess. "You keep looking at your phone." "I was," Maya admitted. "But I don't think they're coming." Sophie considered this with the seriousness of a judge. "That's not very nice. Daddy says if you make a promise, you should keep it." "Your daddy sounds like a smart man." "He is," Sophie said proudly. Then her face fell slightly. "But he's also very sad sometimes. Especially at Christmas." Before Maya could respond, Marcus returned carrying a tray laden with hot chocolates topped with whipped cream and a plate of Christmas cookies. He set everything down with the practiced efficiency of a parent who'd mastered the art of balancing multiple tasks. "Sorry about that," he said, sliding back into his chair. "Sophie, remember what we talked about in the car. Don't talk to strangers about private things," Sophie recited dutifully. Then she looked at Maya. "But you don't feel like a stranger." Something in Maya's chest tightened. Out of the mouths of babes. They fell into an easy conversation, or as easy as it could be with the weight of unspoken sadness hanging over all of them. Maya learned that Marcus was a pediatric nurse, that he'd been at the hospital for a double shift because someone called in sick, that Sophie had spent Christmas Eve in the hospital's children's playroom because the babysitter fell through. "It's not exactly how I planned to spend the holiday," Marcus admitted, watching Sophie carefully sip her hot chocolate. "But plans have a way of changing whether we want them to or not." There was a story there, Maya could tell. A wound that hadn't quite healed. "Tell me about it," she said, surprised by her own honesty. "I was supposed to be on a blind date. My sister set it up. She's been worried about me ever since the accident." The words slipped out before she could stop them. Maya never talked about the accident, not even with her therapist. But something about this exhausted stranger and his perceptive daughter made her walls crumble. Marcus's eyes were understanding, not pitying. "Accident." Maya took a breath. "Car crash, 2 years ago. I was the passenger. My boyfriend was driving. He walked away without a scratch." I didn't. She gestured vaguely to her face. 3 surgeries later, and I'm mostly put back together. But most guys don't get past the scars when they see them in person. I think that's why David didn't show. My sister probably showed him my old photos, and when he looked me up online and saw the recent ones. Then he's an idiot, Marcus said simply. And I say that as someone who just met you, so I have no reason to lie. Sophie, what do you think? Sophie had been listening intently, her hot chocolate mustache giving her a comical appearance that somehow made the moment less heavy. I think you're pretty, she said to Maya. And I think you're brave. Daddy says nurses are brave because they help people even when it's scary. Did the doctors help you like Daddy helps his patients? Maya felt tears prick her eyes, but they weren't the bitter tears she'd been holding back earlier. Yes, they did, very much. Then you're a fighter, Sophie declared. Like the kids at Daddy's hospital. He says they're the bravest people he knows. Marcus reached over and squeezed his daughter's hand, and Maya saw the depth of love and pain in that simple gesture. This was a man who understood struggle, who knew what it meant to keep going when everything felt impossible. Sophie's right, Marcus said quietly. Scars just mean you survived something that tried to break you. That's nothing to hide. For a moment, they just looked at each other, 2 wounded people recognizing kindred spirits. Then Sophie, with the impeccable timing of a child, broke the spell. Daddy, can Maya come home with us for Christmas? Sophie, Marcus's face flushed. You can't just invite people. But you said we should help people who are alone on Christmas. And Maya's alone, and we're alone, so we could be alone together, which means we wouldn't be alone anymore. The logic was irrefutable, and despite himself, Marcus laughed. It was a rusty sound, like he hadn't done it in a while, but genuine. She's not wrong, he admitted, looking at Maya apologetically. Though I'm sure you have better plans than spending Christmas Eve with strangers. Maya thought about her empty apartment, the frozen dinner waiting in her freezer, the sad little Christmas tree she'd barely bothered to decorate. She thought about David, who couldn't even be bothered to send a text canceling their date. She thought about all the Christmases since the accident, spent alone because she was too afraid of pity or rejection to accept invitations. And then she looked at Marcus and Sophie, at the hope in the little girl's eyes and the loneliness hiding behind the father's kind smile, and she made a decision that surprised herself. Actually, she said, I'd love to. Marcus's apartment was modest but warm, filled with evidence of a life being carefully rebuilt. Children's drawings covered the refrigerator. A partially decorated Christmas tree stood in the corner, ornaments clustered at Sophie's height and sparse up top. Photographs lined the walls, but Maya noticed that in the more recent ones, there were only 2 people. No mother. Sophie gave Maya the grand tour, proudly showing off her room with its collection of stuffed animals and the impressive Lego castle she'd been building. Marcus disappeared into the kitchen, and soon the smell of something delicious wafted through the apartment. Daddy's making his special pasta, Sophie confided. He always makes it when we're sad. It's magic pasta. Magic pasta. It makes you feel better. He made it lots after Mommy went to heaven. There it was, the missing piece of the puzzle. Maya knelt down to Sophie's level. When did your mommy go to heaven? Last Christmas, Sophie said matter-of-factly. She got very sick. The doctors tried to help, but sometimes people are too sick even for doctors. Daddy explained it all to me. He doesn't like Christmas anymore because it makes him remember last Christmas. And here Marcus was, working a double shift on Christmas Eve, keeping himself busy so he didn't have to think about it. Taking care of everyone else's children while missing the mother of his own. Maya's heart broke for him. Dinner was indeed magic pasta, a creamy carbonara that Marcus admitted was his late wife's recipe. They ate at the small kitchen table, Sophie chattering about school and her friends and everything a 6-year-old finds important. Marcus watched his daughter with such tender affection that Maya found herself blinking back tears more than once. After dinner, Sophie insisted on watching Elf, her favorite Christmas movie, and curled up on the couch with Mr. Hoppers. Within 20 minutes, she was asleep, her head resting against Maya's arm. She likes you, Marcus said softly, carefully lifting his daughter. She doesn't warm up to people easily. Not since. I understand. Marcus carried Sophie to her room, and Maya found herself looking at the photographs on the walls. Marcus's late wife had been beautiful, with Sophie's blue eyes and a radiant smile. They looked happy in every picture, the kind of happiness that made its loss all the more devastating. When Marcus returned, he had 2 glasses of wine and a weary expression. "I'm sorry," he said, handing Maya a glass. "This probably wasn't how you wanted to spend your Christmas Eve. Listening to a stranger's sad story and being conscripted by a 6-year-old. Actually," Maya said truthfully, "this is the best Christmas Eve I've had in years." They moved to the couch, sitting with a comfortable distance between them. Outside, snow had started to fall, turning the city into something magical. "Her name was Rebecca," Marcus said suddenly. "My wife. We met in nursing school. She was the smartest, funniest, most alive person I'd ever known. Ovarian cancer took her in 8 months. By the time they found it, it was everywhere. I'm so sorry. I was angry for a long time," Marcus continued. "Angry at God, at fate, at the universe. Here I was, a nurse, someone who's supposed to help heal people, and I couldn't do anything to save the person who mattered most. Christmas last year was her last good day. We decorated the tree together, baked cookies, watched movies. 3 days later, she was gone." Maya reached over and took his hand. "Is that why you work today? To avoid the memories? Pathetic, right?" Marcus gave a bitter laugh. "My daughter deserves a father who can make Christmas magical, and instead she gets someone who can barely look at a Christmas tree without falling apart." "You're not pathetic," Maya said firmly. "You're surviving. You're taking care of your daughter and yourself the best way you know how. That's not weakness, Marcus. That's strength," says the woman who got stood up on a blind date and still manages to smile. Says the woman who spent 2 years hiding from life because she was afraid of rejection. "At least you're still trying, still living. I've been a ghost." They sat in silence for a moment, two broken people admitting their fractures to each other. "Can I tell you something?" Marcus asked. "When I saw you in that cafe, sitting alone and looking so sad, my first instinct was to keep walking. I didn't want to intrude on someone else's misery when I was barely holding my own together. But Sophie saw you, and she tugged on my hand, and she said, 'Daddy, that lady needs a friend.' She's 6 years old, and she could see what I was too tired to notice. What's that? That sometimes the people who look the most alone are just waiting for someone brave enough to sit with them." Maya felt tears streaming down her face, and for once, she didn't try to hide them. "I've been so scared," she whispered. "Scared that no one would want me with these scars. Scared that I'm too broken to deserve love. Tonight was supposed to prove I was moving forward, but it just felt like another door slamming in my face." "You're not broken," Marcus said, turning to face her fully. "You're healing. There's a difference. Broken things can't grow, but healing things, they're becoming something new, something stronger. Is that what you tell your patients?" "It's what Rebecca told me, before she died. She said, 'Don't let grief break you. Let it reshape you into something that can hold both the pain and the joy.' I didn't understand it then. But sitting here with you, watching Sophie laugh for the first time in weeks, I think I'm finally starting to get it." They talked for hours after that, sharing stories and fears and hopes. Maya told him about her work as a graphic designer, how she'd built her entire career working from home so she wouldn't have to face people's reactions to her scars. Marcus told her about the kids he treated, the victories and losses, how each child reminded him why he kept going even when it was hard. Somewhere around midnight, Maya realized she was laughing, really laughing, for the first time in months. Marcus had just finished a story about Sophie trying to give Mr. Hoppers a bath in the toilet when they heard small footsteps. Sophie appeared in her pajamas, Mr. Hoppers dragging behind her. "It's Christmas," she announced. "Can we do presents now?" Marcus glanced at the clock and smiled. "It is Christmas, isn't it? Okay, just one present. Then back to bed." Sophie scrambled to the tree and pulled out a small wrapped box. But instead of running to her father, she walked to Maya. "This is for you," Sophie said. "I made Daddy stop at the store before we went to the cafe. I wanted to get something for someone who needed Christmas." Maya's hands shook as she unwrapped the paper. Inside was a small snow globe with a cardinal perched on a branch. The inscription at the base read, "Cardinals appear when angels are near." "Mommy loved cardinals," Sophie explained. "Daddy says when we see them, it means she's checking on us. I thought maybe you needed an angel too." Maya couldn't speak. She pulled Sophie into a hug, this wise little girl who had seen her own tremendous loss and still thought about others. When she looked up at Marcus, his eyes were wet too. "I don't have anything for you," Maya finally managed. "Either of you. You gave us the best gift," Marcus said quietly. "You reminded us we're not alone." They spent Christmas morning together. Marcus made pancakes shaped like snowmen. Sophie insisted Maya help her finish decorating the top of the tree, which meant Marcus had to lift her up to reach. They watched Christmas movies and played board games and built an extension to Sophie's Lego castle. It wasn't the Christmas any of them had planned, but it was exactly what they all needed. As evening approached and Maya prepared to leave, Sophie clung to her legs. "Will you come back?" she asked. "Please. Daddy's happier when you're here. He doesn't have the sad eyes." Marcus looked embarrassed but didn't deny it. "What she means is, we'd love to see you again. If you want. No pressure." Maya knelt down to Sophie's level. "I would love to come back. But only if you promise to show me how to make Mr. Hopper's his own Lego house." "Deal." Sophie threw her arms around Maya's neck. At the door, Marcus walked Maya out into the hallway. The snow was still falling outside, transforming the world into something clean and new. "Thank you," Maya said. "For sitting with me, for seeing me, for doing the unthinkable." "What's that?" "Making Christmas magic for someone who forgot it existed." Marcus smiled, and this time it reached his eyes. "Thank you for reminding me it's okay to try again. Rebecca would have liked you. She always said the bravest people are the ones who show up even when they're scared." "Then I guess we're both pretty brave." "Yeah," Marcus agreed. "I guess we are." They exchanged numbers. Maya promised to text when she got home. And as she walked out into the Christmas snow, she felt something she hadn't experienced in 2 years. Hope. Her phone buzzed as she reached her car. A message from Marcus. "Sophie wants to know if you like ice skating. There's a rink downtown next Saturday." Maya looked at her reflection in the car window. The scars were still there, would always be there. But for the first time, she saw what Marcus and Sophie had seen, not someone broken, but someone who had survived, someone who was healing, someone brave enough to show up. She typed back, "I'd love to. Fair warning. I'm terrible at ice skating." The response was immediate. "Perfect. Sophie and I are experts. We'll teach you." As Maya drove home through the Christmas snow, she thought about blind dates and empty cafes, about single fathers and perceptive daughters, about how sometimes the worst nights turn into the best ones when you're brave enough to let someone sit with you. She'd been left alone on a Christmas blind date. But she hadn't stayed alone. Because a single dad and his daughter had done the unthinkable, they'd seen past the scars and the sadness and the fear, straight through to the person underneath who was just waiting for someone to notice she was worth the effort. And in doing so, they'd given each other the greatest gift of all, the courage to believe in tomorrow. Christmas, Maya realized, wasn't about perfect moments or flawless plans. It was about broken people finding each other in cafes and deciding that together, they could build something beautiful from their fragments. It was about showing up, even when you're scared. It was about being seen. And it was about having the courage to sit with someone who's alone, because sometimes that's all it takes to change everything.